For millennia, people have spotted mysterious objects in the sky. Most witnesses are ordinary, sensible people, startled and amazed at what they see. Many now report their encounters to government officials who deny any knowledge of UFOs. Conspiracy, cover-up, or an ominous miscalculation of the power of the unexplained. (1980), 140 miles outside London on the east coast of England. Woodbridge and Brentwater's naval bases, under the command of the United States Air Force. Together, they form the largest tactical fighter wing in the world. The two bases are separated by a 3-mile stretch of heavy woods, known as the Rendlesham Forest, the backdrop for one of the most investigated UFO sightings in history. This is what it looked like just after midnight, December 27th. Woodridge Security Supervisor Sergeant Jim Peniston rushed to the East Gate, where sentries alerted him to strange lights.
My first thought on it was an aircraft downing, a possible aircraft crash. There was a color scheme of red and yellow and some white light. That's the reaction they get with chemicals.
Peniston radioed back to the flight supervisor and was given permission to investigate. He and the sentries advanced into the darkness until they stumbled on a sight they could not explain.
The air, for example, had a feeling of electricity in it. My feelings at the time ran from confusion to disbelief. I could not understand for the life of me what this could be. The craft itself measured approximately 9 feet by 9 feet, triangular in shape. It had no cockpit, as far as I could tell. There was no windows, just this very highly shiny, black, glass-like material. And I think the most fascinating part of it, at least as far as I was concerned as an investigator, was the fact that this had identifiable inscription, symbols on the side of it.
Peniston says he approached the craft. It was warm when he touched it. Suddenly, it began to move, lifting up silently right before his eyes, then disappearing into the night sky. Peniston claims he drew this sketch of the craft at a debriefing the next morning with the Deputy Base Commander, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt. The next night, Halt received word that the strange lights had returned.
Well, the base commander and I looked at each other quite in disbelief. And I said, well, we both agreed we needed to put this to bed.
Eager to debunk the entire affair, Halt gathered a Geiger counter, night vision starscope, and a handheld tape recorder. Then, with a few men from the Disaster Preparedness Unit, he drove to the area where Peniston had seen the UFO. Portable lights they had brought mysteriously flickered and died. Halt, concerned for the safety of his men, ordered several of them back to the East Gate. With the rest of his unit, he walked into the forest, checking radiation levels. He says they seemed unusually high. Suddenly, off in the distance, Halt spotted a glowing object. This is the actual recording Halt made of his UFO encounter that night.
Okay, we're looking at the thing. We're probably about 200 to 300 yards away. It looks like an eye winking at you. And it flashes so bright to the starscope that it almost burns your eye. Yeah, that's right. There's no doubt about it. This is weird. There's something very, very strange.
And there we stood. Well, we didn't know quite what to think of that. But when we looked to the north, suddenly there were objects in the sky. And we watched this in awe. Suddenly the object came toward us at high speed. It moved directly toward us. I can't estimate the speed, but it moved very rapidly. Stopped and sent down a pencil-like beam at our feet. And just as fast as the beam appeared, it just clicked off, disappeared. I still have questions as to what happened. I really don't know what it was. I do know it was something strange, something that was controlled by some type of intelligence, and that's about all I really know.
2 weeks later, Halt described the incident in a memo sent to the British Ministry of Defense. The British government never responded to the memo, but word of the encounter spread. 3 years later, UFO researchers pressured the Air Force commander to release the memo under the Freedom of Information Act. News of the Rendlesham incident also generated enormous interest from UFO researchers and skeptics. Here was a case with highly credible witnesses, trained Air Force personnel. Tucson astronomer and retired U.S. Air Force pilot James McGahey is a UFO skeptic who investigated Holt and Peniston's alleged encounter. McGahey insists Holt mistook the beams from a lighthouse 5 miles away for a spacecraft.
That object that was winking at him, which is on the tape, is clearly the lighthouse. Now he's looking at the lighthouse, I think, with a starlight scope. Now remember, here comes this beam of light. He's looking at this light with 100,000 times intensity. What it's going to do is it's going to burn out the image in the center, so it's going to become black. And that's what easily explains the beams and these other things.
When Holt's tape is played against the flashing of the lighthouse, this seems to be the case.
Right in this position here, straight ahead, in between the tree, there it is again. Watch, straight ahead off my flash right there. There it is. I see it too.
I can't explain that. I really don't know. I never gave it any thought. I do know that the whole time we were out there, we could see the lighthouse. And the lighthouse was about 35 or 40 degrees off to our right from where this whole thing took place.
Did area radar operators confirm the UFO sighting? Holt says maybe.
They really didn't confirm they found anything, although later I found out that when they reviewed the tapes, they did find some things on the tape.
If he has a radar report, I'd like to see it, because I investigated this and I couldn't find one.
Skeptics also suggest the Rendlesham UFO might have been a meteor, bright stars, or a Russian satellite that fell out of the sky that night.
To me, this is just a case of where a number of people saw some lights, got a little excited, thought about UFOs, and all of a sudden everything they see is a UFO. The first night, it was a combination of a satellite reentry, a meteor fireball, and a police car driving around in the woods. The second night, it turns out to be a lighthouse, some microwave antennas, and some stars in the sky.
We had a controlled landing. Apparently there was no crater. We also had a craft that was able to take back off with absolutely no sound, which tells me high technology, and maneuver back through the tree line, rise over the trees, hover momentarily, and then take off at incredible speed. It's just totally ridiculous to even consider that it was a Russian satellite or a meteor. Impossible.
In 1991, believing serious questions were still unanswered, the British government finally responded to the Rendlesham incident. Nick Pope, its top UFO investigator, reopened the case.
I've always felt that Rendlesham Forest is a case which displays a lot of important factors all drawn together. You have a multiple witness event. Those witnesses are trained military observers. The Defense Radiological Protection Service had no explanation as to why the radiation readings taken by Colonel Holt's team were so high. Undoubtedly, something very strange had happened there.
Pope requested further investigation. The British government said no and closed the file. Perhaps in part due to this fact, Sergeant Peniston arrived at the site at approximately 1 a.m. and re-emerged from Rendlesham